you like him? You want him to work with you? Shall we keep him?" And he said, "Get him away from me. Get him away from me. You're wasting his time."
Mentioned about based on memory, in the kitchen, in the room, what they were doing, what you were doing, what you were watching.
Yeah. Well, the year was 1989. I remember it like if it was yesterday, to be honest with you. And I went up to my boss, who was the managing director of Club 101. Now, at that time, I was not a full-timer anymore. I had not been a full-timer for a long time. And then the artwork and all that's going to come back later on. But 1989, okay? And it's summertime of 1989. And I go, and the GM that I told you about that pointed me in the right direction, he had left already. He went to a few blocks away on top of Grand Central Station, which used to be the Pan Am building. Back then, it was still the Pan Am building. It's the MetLife building now, I believe, still. MetLife, is it? Or yeah, MetLife Insurance, I think it is. Anyway, there was a place on the top that was called, on the 57th floor, called the Sky Club in the Pan Am building. The Sky Club has since closed in the I think it was like 2007 or 2008 it closed. Anyway, he went there as a GM to run that. And so the managing director, he was an older man from Austria, Michael Issip. Michael Issip was, I think he was like 5'2", but he stood 6'5", 6'6" tall. That's how, I mean, you're talking about the consummate professional, someone who had worked on every continent on the planet. And he was a managing partner. He was actually a partner in the company that was the management company that ran Club 101 and many other private club operations and cafeterias nationwide. Anyway, so he handled all of the New York City operations, which there are quite a few of them. And he was the one, he didn't bring a new GM in. He basically would run things remotely, and he would add some kind of responsibilities to certain people, myself included, even though I was just part-time then. Anyway, I went to his office, and he was like a father to me. And so I was able to walk in and say, I knocked on his door and I said, "Mr. Issa, can I ask you a question?" And he said, "Sure, come on in, sit down." And I said to him, "You know anything about the Quilted Giraffe?" And he said, "Yes, I do. Why? What do you want to know about it?" And I said, "Well, I want to work there." He said, "Yeah, you and half of New York City." The Quilted Giraffe was 4 stars, longer than any other restaurant in New York. And the only one that beats them is Le Bernardin, by the way, because they stayed open. And on December 31st, 1992, we closed. So needless to say, I ended up getting in there. But I asked him that question, he said, "So you really want to work there?" I said, "Do you know anyone or anyone that knows anyone there that can make a phone call?" And he said, "God, no, I don't know anybody that I can think of, but if I do, I'll let you know." I said, "Okay, thank you. I'll see you tomorrow." So I left, and I, went to the locker room and got my briefcase. I had like a little attaché, and I had a suit and tie there. I came in, nicely dressed. I was always dressed to the nines. I loved suits. I still do. And I had my resume printed out, my letters of recommendation, and I got outside and pointed myself in the direction of the Quilted Giraffe, which was the AT&T building that became the Sony building. Now there's a new company that took it over. But anyway, I walked up to the front of the Quilted Giraffe and I looked, and there was somebody that was just let in the door because this was between lunch and dinner, so they closed. It's locked. And I waited outside. I said, "Someone's got to come out." And when they come out, I'm going to try to see if I can talk to the person to let me in. So as they were letting the person out, I went to the door and I held it open and I said, "Hi, my name is Chris. I'd like to speak to the manager, please." And he said, "Yeah, that's me. I'm the GM. My name's David. What's your name?" And I told him my name. And he said, "Come on in." So he let me in. So anyway, I said, "Look, I'm looking for work and I really want to work here." And I'm awestruck. I'm standing there in a 4-star restaurant, one of the most famous places in not only New York but in the United States at that time. And I'm kind of awestruck, but at the same time I'm holding myself together. And I said, "Look, I have a resume and some letters of recommendation. Can I hand it to you?" And he said, "Sure." He grabbed it and he picks it up, and I had a bunch of letters of recommendation that were stacked up behind from different people in the industry that were recommending me, and this is lengthy and heavy. And I said, "Well, those are letters of recommendation." So, okay. And he said, "Well, I did have someone already for a position that I have open, and he's going to come and trail, and if he doesn't work out, I'll give you a call." And I said, "Can I ask you to do me a big favor and trail him and trail me, and whichever one you like better, you take?" And he looks at me and he said, "You're hired." And I said, "You mean I can come in and trail?" He said, "Well, yeah, but you're hired. Because no one has had the nerve to come in here and tell me to do something like that. You're hired." And I was like, whoa, my legs didn't work. I was numb. I'm like, now what do I do? I mean, this is the big leagues here, not to mention where I was working. I didn't realize that it was the same service, the same kind. I had done that already. I didn't know that yet, obviously. So you said, how does it feel to be in a room with a chef that, this? Well, the first day came of the trail, but before that happened, when I walked outside, I went to the first payphone, called the managing director. He gets on the phone, of course, right away. And I said, "Mr. Issip, I was just hired at the Quilted Giraffe." And he's like, "What?" "I was just hired. I just went in and I just came out," and I'm like, I can barely, he could tell that there's a lot of excitement in my voice. And he's like, my. So anyway, long story short, first day of training comes in, where you have to start in the back at the lowest position. We didn't have busboys there because we were not a school. We were a real restaurant. So, and I don't agree with that philosophy, but back then, yeah, I bought it. Hook, line, and sinker.
All right.
And I was told to, I'm going to be running food with the expediter and head runner that night, but they were giving me a tour, and I saw Barry Wine. He's the owner and the chef, and then he had a chef de cuisine that handled all the kitchen stuff and all that. But I remember seeing him and just being in awe, just like I knew who he was. I knew what he was. I knew that I'm standing in the most expensive restaurant in the United States, 4 stars longer than any other established restaurant in the industry, and one of the top 10 most expensive restaurants in the world, voted by the Herald Tribune International. So, I mean, I was like, wow, I'm really here. This is really happening to me, and obviously I didn't even scratch the surface. I was basically so far behind, not behind, but I had a lot of climbing to do. So that night I was running food. Barry Wine stopped me once. Not that I was really doing anything wrong, but he stopped me to tell me, the dishes you're carrying, you need to be more careful with them. They're irreplaceable. They break. Not only are they extremely expensive, these are artist lines. They've been created for the Quilted Giraffe, and they're only 8 or 6 or 12 or 10 of each of these artist collections. And I had to fly to Tokyo and then go to Osaka to go, and then to Kyoto to get these dishes and these artists to make them for us. So please be careful. The end of the shift comes, the maitre d' comes in and talks to the head runner, Cecil, and said to him, all right, so you like him? You want him to work with you? Shall we keep him? And he said, get him away from me. Get him away from me. You're wasting his time back here. Put him in the front. So I didn't have to do like a year or two running food. I went right in to become a front waiter, which was pretty intense. And it was I had done that style of service, obviously not to that exact level, but very similar. And so that training at Club 101 really did a lot for me.